Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is CraigCrash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. We've got a lot to get into tonight. Super Bowl 56 is finally set. The Rams and the Bengals. We're going to dive into that a little bit. Not too much because we have the Super Bowl preview coming up next week. We're also going to get into some other NFL news as well, as we've got Tom Brady retiring, Matt Eberflus to the Bears, some other things to kind of tie up, as the NFL offseason has gotten into gear for a majority of the league. And then we're also going to talk some college hoops. We meant to do this last week. Of course, we didn't have the podcast last week, but we're going to dive into some college basketball, talk about IU, talk about some of the big surprises we have. So, B. Scott, a lot to get into tonight.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's 6 pages of rundown tonight, folks. Hold on tight.
Oh, yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. And so, with that said, let's go ahead and get into it. So we had the conference championship games this past weekend. B. Scott and I, when we did our championship preview last week, which was a standalone episode on YouTube, we were talking about how, you know what, we were thinking it was going to be like Chiefs. Well, I thought it was going to be Chiefs Niners. B. Scott thought it was going to be Chiefs Rams. And we're like, that's what we want. That's what we think is going to happen. But we think it's going to be, or we want it to be Rams and Bengals. And you know what? We got what we wanted. First, with the AFC Championship game, the Bengals win 27-24. The Chiefs and Mahomes were rolling early. It almost seemed by the end of the game that it was kind of like wrong that the Bengals were going to win, because as dominant as the Chiefs were early on, I mean, it looked like they were just going to roll to their third straight Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes had touchdown passes to Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and McCole Hardman, put Kansas City up 21-3 with 5:04 left in the first half. 21-10 at halftime as Joe Burrow finds Samaje Perine for a 41-yard touchdown with 1:05 left in the half. The Bengals then tied the game at 21 later on in the third as Joe Burrow finds Jamar Chase for a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion. We're tied at 21, and then each team trades a field goal, so we're going into overtime. We also talked about overtimes on the preview. We're worried about how maybe this was going to turn out. We know what happened with the Bills and Chiefs, where the Bills didn't get a chance to have the ball. But in this instance, both the Bengals and the Chiefs got a chance to possess the ball. The Chiefs did win the toss, but Patrick Mahomes intercepted on a pass deflected by Fort Wayne Schneider's own Jesse Bates III. Evan McPherson then hits a 31-yard field goal to send Cincinnati to their first Super Bowl since 1988. I was not alive yet. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, B. Scott, I wondered if you were alive, B. Scott. B. Scott was live and alive.
Actually, I'm pretty sure I was just like a few weeks old.
Yeah,
at that point.
That's true, because if it would have been in January. So yeah, it's true. Joe Burrow, 23 for 38, 250 yards, a touchdown and interception. Jamar Chase, 6 catches, 54 yards. So we thought it was, Jamar Chase was just going to eat against this Kansas City defense, but they did a good job holding him in check. Patrick Mahomes, 26 of 39, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Over to the NFC side, the Rams win 20-17 over the 49ers. Matthew Stafford hit Cooper Kupp for a 16-yard touchdown to open the scoring. The 49ers then score 17 unanswered points across the remainder of the game heading into the fourth quarter. It was powered by a Jimmy G touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel, as well as another one to George Kittle. It was 17-7 49ers. After 3 quarters into the fourth, Cooper Kupp catches his second touchdown pass from Stafford. Matt Gay connects on 2 field goals, including the game winner with 1:46 left. And Jimmy G then does his best Carson Wentz impression, tries to just chuck a ball as he's getting sacked. He's intercepted, and it puts LA in the Super Bowl in their home stadium. So that's where we are. Rams and Bengals. Matthew Stafford, 31 for 45, 337 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Cooper Kupp, 11 catches, 142 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jaquiski Tartt had an interception in his hands for San Francisco when the Niners were still up by 10. Now, that was with about 8 minutes to play. So I mean,
That's a lot of time.
yeah, it's still a lot of time, but I mean, if they intercept that pass and go up even by 13, go up even by 17, you can argue that it would have been a very different outcome. So looking back at this past weekend of football and the conference championship games, I mean, of course, you're welcome, Rams. I bailed on you guys during the playoff predictions. They were my NFC champion at the beginning of the season. When going into the playoffs, I had a lot more faith in Tom Brady. I had a lot more faith in Aaron Rodgers. Neither of them able to get it done. Matthew Stafford has stepped up. So the Rams, but overall though, the Rams were pretty much expected. They were what we thought they were going to be. But on the other side, I mean, the Bengals, we did not see them coming. The Rams went out. They got Stafford for this type of run, and they made good on their investment. It shows what can be accomplished when you go all in. Colts. I do also enjoy that the Rams get to play in their own stadium. They get their play in their own stadium accomplishment. They take that away from it being solely Tom Brady's accomplishment last year. So that's kind of wild. It's 54 years of Super Bowls that never happened, and now it's happened in back-to-back years. And now, I mean, like I said, no one saw the Bengals coming. I look back at our preseason tier list when we were going through how many wins we thought each team was going to have, and we both had the Bengals in the 5 to 9 category, and I know we both probably had them more in the 5 to 6 win category as opposed to at the higher end of that category. I do want to throw out there, B. Scott, that you also had the Rams in that category, but probably more along the lines of 8 or 9 wins than 5 or 6. But at the same time, I mean, we had them both kind of, down at the bottom of the barrel. We didn't think the Bengals were going to be this team. I'm going to have to dive deeper into the numbers, which we'll do for the Super Bowl special, to kind of get a little bit more of a feel of just how they've been able to pull off these wins. But I mean, the bottom line is they've just found their ways to win and overcome, adversity, overcome what they've been stacked against. I mean, their game against the Raiders, they never really had to face a ton of adversity. They pretty much, even though it was a 7-point game, it felt like the Bengals won by 2 touchdowns. But as far as, I mean, against the Titans, overcoming 9 sacks, to be able to win that game, against the Chiefs, a team that, has been there, done that. We talked about it in championship preview. They've been here before. They've been here 4 straight years in the AFC Championship game. They get a chance. They're down 21-3, and they have an opportunity to scratch and claw, come back, win that game. That's just crazy. And I think this is maybe one of the best single-season turnarounds of our generation. I was looking back. There was a Bleacher Report article, and I was trying to look at like recent ones because they had, they had the 1988 Bengals on that list as well. But the only 2 that were close were the 2015 Panthers, but I mean, they were dominant throughout the course of the season. Once it got to the playoffs, I think they were the 1 seed, right, that year? Like, once it got, or maybe the 2 seed at least, once it got to the playoffs, like, it became apparent they were a favorite to potentially make it to the Super Bowl. And they were
they had the MVP that year.
Right.
And Cam Newton. I mean,
they're also a franchise, too, that, was only about a decade removed from their previous Super Bowl run. It's not like, I mean, not to say that they had like the same pieces because they really didn't, but you're just saying that like they had that kind of history built up as well. And then they also threw in the 2019 49ers, which, I mean, the reason why they were more of a turnaround is because they had a ton of injuries the year before, and so they were probably, a Super Bowl contender. And I think, coming into that season, they had a bunch of injuries. Now I can't remember if they were the 1 seed, but I know they hosted the NFC Championship game that year, against the Packers.
I don't believe they were the 1 seed.
If they weren't, they were at least the 2 or 3 because the Packers. So yeah, I mean, they were they hosted the AFC or the NFC Championship game that year. So like I think, for a team to not only do this turnaround but do it all on the road, I mean, this has to be one of the biggest turnarounds at least of recent memory.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely this Super Bowl was totally unexpected if you go back to our preseason show and hear what our thoughts were. Honestly, I did not expect Matthew Stafford to have the kind of season he did. And honestly, we were seeing that it wasn't Matthew Stafford all along. It was the Detroit Lions. And obviously the addition of OBJ, you can't overlook that. But what's interesting is that this these two teams, it just goes to show you how important position players are, skilled position players. And I mean, there's the most unknown name, I guess, on of the teams at wide receiver. I guess you could almost say is Cooper Kupp, but he's one of those guys that's outperforming where he was, the thought process was on him and everything. But these teams are loaded at skilled positions. If you look at it, I mean, Cooper Kupp, OBJ for the Rams, they could go on. And then the Bengals, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. And they also, the other thing, both of these teams have franchise quarterbacks that can get the ball to their weapons. That's a very common denominator there. Just saying. There's another team that could, take a look at that blueprint and realize, hey, you know what? That's how we won a Super Bowl in the past. Franchise quarterback, top tier weapons. Yeah. But I just love the story of the Bengals. It's just, it's a fun one. It's hard not to get behind this team, but at the same time, it's hard not to get behind the LA Rams as well. Like, there's no reason to not like them. Same thing with the Bengals. Like, this is like the best possible scenario, I feel like, for the NFL. The both teams are very intriguing teams. You got Matthew Stafford, who was being poorly utilized in Detroit in his first year in LA, leads them to a Super Bowl. You got OBJ, who many thought was a locker room cancer, and turns out he was just in a cancerous locker room, and is back to, maybe not fully back, but playing up to the level we know he can play at. And then the Bengals, obviously, the Bengals, it's a very young team that is just riding on some incredible momentum. Let's just be honest there. It's a great story. It's great also because you have major market versus small market. I mean, Cincinnati's a small. Somebody said on a meeting I was in today, they're from Cincinnati and they're a Bengals fan, and they said, Cincinnati, it's a small town. I wouldn't call it a small town, but it's not a major city by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's a city, but it's bigger than the city I live in. But it's just a great story overall, and it's one of those that if you are just if you're a fan of the NFL or a fan of football and your team's not playing, this is one of those Super Bowls that you're gonna watch the whole thing. Like last year, I didn't watch the whole thing because it's like, I don't want to watch Tom Brady win another Super Bowl. There was reason to turn it off. This year, it's like, I don't care who wins. It's going to be a fun one. This is going to be a great game, and it's just, I'm looking forward to this one probably the most outside of if I had a horse in the race. And I don't. So that's what I'm excited about, that I can actually enjoy a game and not have any vested interest in one team winning or another team losing. So I'm super excited about this game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because this is how I felt going into, and maybe, I mean, on a little bit of a, maybe not, maybe kind of very similar to the 2020 Super Bowl off the 2019 season, the Chiefs and 49ers, where it was like, you know what, I don't really care who wins. Like, I want, kind of like in this one, like I want the AFC team that never has won in the past or has been forever since they've won. I want to see that team win, but I'm not going to be disappointed if it's the other team that's got a little bit more history from the bigger market. So,
Right.
there's no, again, there's no Tom Brady to root against. There's no other, outlying.
What's funny though is that, The LA Rams, yeah, they come from a small a major market, but it wasn't that long ago they were in St. Louis. Let's be honest.
Right.
I mean, St. Louis is probably going, "Are you kidding me? They've made it to the Super Bowl twice since they've left here. Oh, come on!" And then you got to look at Cleveland Browns fans and go, "The football gods just must hate us. They just must hate us." We trade away, we cut OBJ. He goes to LA. Now he's playing in the Super Bowl. And then Cincinnati makes the Super Bowl as well, when people looked at us as a Super Bowl contender. And now we're a dumpster fire. So that's kind of fun. But I gotta end on this right here. Kevin McAllister was able to stop the TikTok bandits from making it to the Super Bowl. Thank you very much.
I do like that. I like that analogy. But you mentioned Tom Brady. Speaking of Tom Brady, we're gonna talk about some more NFL news here. It's finally official. When we made this outline, it was kind of this weird, like, he had told.
It was official.
It was officially,
and then it wasn't official.
It was officially unofficial. That Tom Brady was going to retire, but now finally he has said that he is retiring after 22 seasons. Honestly, I'm not surprised in the sense that, he's 45, he's going to be 45 in August. He said he wanted to play till his 45, because, he wanted to play till 45. He'll be that in August. But I'm surprised in the sense that, it's coming off a season where he led the league in passing yards and touchdowns. He was second in QBR. His 5,300 yards were the most he's thrown in the single season. And if you want to say something about the extra game, he had over 5,000 yards in another season that was 16 games. There's a lot of respect that I have for Tom Brady. Obviously, as a Colts fan, I've been loving the tweets of the SpongeBob meme of him leaving. But I have respect for him going out on a near MVP season. You never want to go out. I mean, even towards the end, Peyton wasn't exactly Peyton.
Peyton, he won a Super Bowl, but
yeah,
he didn't win a Super Bowl. His defense.
Well, hey, you know what? I will say this: of all the times that we've thought, like, man, if Peyton Manning had a better defense, if he had Tom Brady's defense, if he had Eli's defense, he'd have, at least one more, two more rings. And that finally got proven.
That one more.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to go out when you're a shell of your former self. But at the same time, if there's a quarterback that could have called this shot and said, you know what, I'm going to go out on a Super Bowl win, it's Tom Brady. And I honestly, at this point, was thinking he might play till 50. Because I was like, well, he said he wanted to play till 45, and that news broke when he was like 41. And here he is almost 45, and he's still playing like he's 35. So,
I need to get in on that TB12 method.
Right. It still seems a little surreal that, the run's finally over for Tom Brady. But, like I said, surprised but not surprised.
Yeah, actually, I'm not surprised. I guess if you look at the season as a whole and the way it ended, not wanting to go out on a losing note and everything, that's surprising. But if you listen to what he said post-game or the day after that loss to the Rams, this decision's not surprising. Basically, to sum it up, he basically said, hey, my wife, Giselle, she has given up so much of her career to allow me to have my career, whether it was in Massachusetts or whether it's now in Florida, and she still has so much she wants to do in her career. And I've accomplished so much in mine. There's nothing more I can accomplish. It's now time for me to give back to her and allow her to go out and accomplish her dreams and her goals. And it's time for me to stay home with the family while she does that. So those comments right there scream to me, he's hanging it up. It's not a football decision. It's not, I can't play this game anymore. I mean, because he even has said in the past, I'm going to play this game until I suck. And well, obviously that didn't happen, but it's amazing what family can do. He's at it. He's, that was the big thing. That was the big deciding factor. And when he, like I said, when he said that, I knew it was over. the reign of Brady has come to an end. So I'm not surprised. I am kind of surprised though that no, I'm not even surprised that the decision came so quickly. I am surprised that when it got leaked that he was going to retire, that, or, word potentially got out to people, that he didn't stop it, or, his PR machine didn't stop it. I do put that on Adam Schefter for jumping the gun there. I mean,
Schefter again.
it's kind of like the equivalent of a beat reporter for a college team announcing that some big recruit is going to commit, and then I thought this was going to happen. Then a commit, the kid ends up turning around and going, well, no, I wanted to commit I wanted to make the announcement. I've been putting together this video, and now I'm not, and ends up committing somewhere else. I thought, you know what? It's Tom Brady we're talking about here. He didn't get to break the news. He's going to come back and play another year now. Adam Schefter, you just ruined the whole thing. Thank you very much. But no, I think ultimately in the end, the family angle was just too big of an angle to look away from. And I respect that decision, And like he said, the future of the NFL is in great hands with these young quarterbacks now. He felt confident in leaving and stepping away because, the future, because he knows the future's so bright, which is, that's a really admirable thing as well. For somebody that is a vicious competitor, I mean, trash talker extraordinaire, for him to step out on that kind of high praise of other players is amazing. So it was a great way for him to go out, and for the right reasons as well. So I'm glad to see him go. But at the same time, it's going to be weird. And I feel like this decision for Tom Brady leaving I'll talk about it another time in more in depth, but it could impact the Colts quarterback situation.
Good. I also I wonder if I'd be interested to know if let's say 2 or 3 years down the line, if we get some how long until the Tom Brady is coming out of retirement rumors start?
I don't think that's happening.
You don't think that's going to happen?
No, because of the family angle. Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, Tampa Bay fans, calm down already. This speculation's already fired up. They're already chiming for Andrew Luck to come out of retirement and team back up with Bruce Arians.
That'd be interesting.
Folks, have you seen Andrew Luck recently?
Yeah, if you saw him at the college football championship, I don't think that's happening.
He's not in football playing shape whatsoever, folks. And it's not he's fat. It's he's lost a lot of weight. He's a very skinny man now.
Yes.
And yeah.
Look,
Andrew Luck's not coming out of retirement. And even the Pittsburgh Steelers fans are like, oh my gosh, he's sitting down with some former Pittsburgh offensive linemen. Do you think he's interested in playing for the Steelers? No, not happening. Andrew Luck loves retirement. Andrew Luck does not look like he's ready to put on any kind of football pads or anything. It's a remarkable difference of how he looks.
Now, see, that's not the number 12 that I've kind of had an inkling of who might end up going down and taking over for the old number 12. I was perusing through TikTok, and somebody was speculating, one of the sports accounts I follow was speculating how Aaron Rodgers could potentially be a fit down in Tampa.
Yeah.
I mean,
Aaron Rodgers could be a fit just anywhere.
Well,
let's just be honest.
But as that being a little bit more appealing now, because I mean that team is obviously stacked. They can win.
Is it though?
I mean,
is it? Gronk most likely retiring now.
I mean, that's true.
You don't have AB. Chris Godwin is coming off of an injury and is a free agent.
You have Mike Evans.
Leonard
Fournette.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette, but
Bruce Arians, but also because the rumor too has been
the big is Bruce Arians.
Yeah,
that's the big one.
Also, because that was my whole thought process of him going to New Orleans, because I was like, you could go play with Sean Payton. That's a team that's stacked. I still don't think really he would go to.
I don't think he goes
Excuse
to
me.
Pittsburgh.
I don't think he goes to Pittsburgh or Denver, to be honest. But
No, there's not enough there. But I'll just say what I was talking about with the Colts situation. Apparently, Bruce Arians has said in the past that one of the quarterbacks that he would love to coach and he feels like is a great has the potential to be. He just would love to coach because he feels like it could fit into his system is Carson Wentz.
yeah,
And now that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are quarterback needy, maybe he feels like, hey, I'm a good quarterback whisperer as well. I can really help change him because, we have more weapons down here than he has up in Indianapolis.
true.
But so, and it won't take much to get him.
Right.
Throw a fourth round pick at Indianapolis and I'm sure they'll jump at it.
True.
A fourth and a 7 or a fourth and a future 6th or something. I don't know, but it's not the haul that Indy lost getting him. It's
something.
It's better than a pack of gum and a deck of baseball cards.
Last little bit of NFL news we'll get into. Matt Eberflus, the Colts defensive coordinator. You're setting up these transitions well because now we're going to talk about the Colts a little bit. Colts defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus gets hired to be the next coach of the Bears. My reaction to that, I mean, you look at, Matt Eberflus's career with the Colts. He took over a Colts defense that ranked 30th in yards per game. In 2018, his first year, they were 11th. In 2019, they were 16th. In 2020, they were 8th. That was kind of their breakout season. And then this past year, they were 16th. Now, the Bears over that time, oddly enough, were 3rd, 8th, 11th, and 6th. So in almost every year, the Bears defense was better than the Colts defense. And the Bears' defensive coordinators over that time, Vic Fangio, who's now the coach of the Broncos, Chuck Pagano, and Sean Desai. Now, excuse me, it can't be denied that Eberflus did turn around the Colts defense, but I'm just surprised that with an offense that's trying to mold Justin Fields, who feels like they finally have their guy, and I believe they do, they don't go after an offensive coordinator, somebody who's got maybe a little bit more of a track record of grooming a quarterback. I mean, Eberflus has been a defensive coach, throughout his entirety. It's not like, he's kind of dabbled in both, which you don't really usually see anyway. But they do end up, I did look at Bears Reddit, and the fans, seem to be pretty, on board with Eberflus. Their big thing was we need to get a good offensive coordinator. Well, they did get their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, who was the Packers offensive coordinator. He's been in the Packers organization for 7 of the last 8 years. So again, he was with an already established quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. He didn't really have to groom or develop him. So, I mean, I know that can't be, excuse me, your sole, qualifier when you're looking for a head coach. You can't just be like, I just want the best quarterback whisperer you can get me. I know that can't be your only look, but I'm just surprised. Now, granted, I mean, some of these guys they couldn't have talked to anyway because of the way the playoffs were unfolding. But I'm surprised they didn't look at like an Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs, a Brian Callahan of the Bengals, who also worked with Derek Carr in Las Vegas. Or someone who's been a young quarterback in the league himself, Byron Leftwich. I'm surprised that they didn't go after.
I'm just surprised Byron Leftwich isn't a head coach somewhere after this cycle.
Right, exactly.
That's so surprising in general.
Right. So I'm just surprised that they didn't go after somebody who's a little bit more offensively minded. Those 3 guys that I mentioned,
Kellen Moore, even.
Kellen Moore. Somebody like that. Who could potentially groom Justin Fields into what you want him to be. So very, very, it's one of those things where like I don't really understand it, but Bears fans seem to be happy. So maybe it'll turn out for the best. They have had better luck with defensive-minded head coaches. Mark
That's
Trestman, Matt Nagy. That may be why they're staying away from anybody who's dealt with the Chiefs. But yeah, I mean, I'm just surprised they didn't go more offensive-minded with their head coach.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, though, your defense is already a step ahead. So a defensive-minded coach, I guess, can help them maintain that. And if you bring in the right coordinators, it can help elevate your offense to the next level as well. Um, I'll tell you what, this hire bailed the Colts out. The Colts were definitely going to need a change on defense, and they're getting a wholesale change now because literally Eberflus is taking the entire defensive staff with him, it seems like, which is a good thing. I feel like, yeah, this defense led the league in takeaways, like with 33. I mean, that I saw that number. I was like, 33 takeaways. That's ungodly. I'm like, that's a lot. But if you look back, it's like, yeah, they did. They took the ball away quite often. But yeah, I mean, he's been a talked about commodity for several years now since he had that first big, great season as Colts defensive coordinator. But at the same time, this always felt like this was going to be somewhere along the line, the Colts were going to have to dump him. Not because the defense was getting any worse. I mean, it wasn't a great defense. It was a good defense, but not great. Especially with some of the players that they have, they could be better. Mostly because he was a guy that they brought in pre Frank Reich, and Frank kept him around for a couple of years, and then he had a good season, and the talk of him being a head coach fired up. And now with the Colts definitely needing a change of voice on that side of the ball, they got bailed out and not having to let go of him. Which is allowing them now to interview Jim Schwartz, who I'm like, please hire him, please hire him, please hire him. We need an aggressive defense to go along with our ball hawking defense. But yeah, hey, you know what? You always love to see one of your coaches, even a coordinator, get that opportunity because you know that they were doing something right. And with Eberflus being the talk, probably the hottest commodity in the coaching carousel the past couple of years, that's always good, positive, like PR for the Colts, I guess. I mean, he must be doing something right. The Colts must be doing something right. So any bit of good marketing can help anybody. So good for him. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the Colts. It did not have to end badly between the two. And this allows the Colts now to get that change of voice that they needed.
Yeah, I'm the person I'm hoping they can get in there is Brian Flores. I don't know how realistic that is,
especially after today.
Yeah, does that look badly on Flores?
It doesn't look badly it doesn't look badly. Oh, it's not bad on the Dolphins. The Dolphins had every right to let go of them and start the process over. It just looks bad on the NFL in general. And because of that, you don't want any media circus.
How would it not look bad on the Dolphins more than it would Flores?
Because the Dolphins, if you look at it, wasn't, I don't know. I mean, he was an interim head coach. How often does an interim head coach get the job? I don't think it looks bad on the Dolphins as bad as it does overall on the NFL.
Yeah.
To be honest, and I think there needs to be some change within the NFL. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the rule where you have to interview.
Is it Rooney Rule?
The Rooney Rule. Yeah. That needs totally thrown out and updated. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the talent and players that are retiring, there's definitely the ability to have more coaches of minorities. I mean, for instance, Darius Butler right now, former Colts defense back, is screaming from the rooftops, give me a chance. I want to coach. I want to come to Indianapolis and coach. I don't care if you even look at me as your defensive coordinator. I want to coach. He's everywhere screaming it. There's a perfect opportunity, So that's the type of stuff that needs to be looked at. And I think that's what Brian Flores is saying, is that, years upon years of, stacked up racial inequalities are just, it's just, you know, I don't know how to say it really, but for him, getting that out there, I think it's going to be tough. He knows, he even said, yeah, I may have just killed my coaching career altogether. Not because of the issue that he's bringing up, but because it's so public. Teams now aren't going to want to bring in Brian Flores because of a potential media circus that follows him. Just like what happened to Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow basically got blackballed from the NFL because nobody wanted to deal with the media circus that followed him for who knows why. They just followed him, you know? So yeah. I think that's why Brian Flores, I don't know if he would be, I mean, would be an option, but yes, he was one prior to today, and everything that unfolded was definitely high on my list. I didn't think it would happen because I thought Brian Flores was going to end up as a head coach somewhere with the way Miami did finish out their season. I was certain he would end up somewhere. I thought, yeah, you're not going to get him because he's got higher aspirations on his mind, which, yeah, he deserves that. But if there is an organization that would bring in Brian Flores, even after everything today, it is the Colts, because that's just Jim Irsay. That's his personality and the way he views it. Like, bring him in and bring him into the family. And I think if he hasn't been linked to the position by this point, regardless of what happened, then he's not going to be linked to he's not going to have the position. I think honestly, it's going to come down to either Chris Harris, the defense back coach for the Washington football team, or Jim Schwartz. I give Jim Schwartz the edge there just because he's been a defensive coordinator in the past, and he's worked with Frank Reich in the past. His defensive philosophy is very intense and aggressive, and that's the change. That fits the change that the Colts are needing to make. Honestly,
true.
I forget the other name of the other candidate they brought in, the former Ravens coordinator, but
Rex Ryan.
No, not Rex Ryan.
I know.
But I feel like ultimately it's going to be Jim Schwartz, just because of the familiarity. Like, this is kind of overcompensating for the fact that, you know, Frank allowed them to keep Eberflus. Oh yeah, he can stay. He'll be my defensive coordinator. That's fine. Now you're bringing in somebody that Frank wants.
Right.
So sorry to go off on a tangent and a rabbit hole, but
hey,
kind of where it is.
It'll be something to look at as the weeks go by. So that'll do it for our NFL conversation. We're going to talk some college basketball, but before we do that, let's talk about our friends of the show. First, we want to talk about Anchor. Anchor is a free website to use, anchor.fm. You can get right to podcasting. You can upload your podcast either directly to the website itself, or you can record externally like we do. And once you upload it, you can release it. And then it sets it up to a bunch of different podcast apps: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. It just is a great way to distribute. It also allows you to monetize right away with an Anchor sponsorship, so that's nice. And then it also archives your broadcasts as well, so you get like unlimited space and that kind of stuff. So, or at least we haven't reached the limits yet, so at least a couple of years worth of podcast episodes. So it's a great website to use. Also, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game. That is a podcast about the value of using board games to build bridges, both in the workplace and out. It's done by Adam Collins. He's also on all the podcast apps as well: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. So go check that out as well. He has guests, all that good kind of stuff. So go out there and check out that podcast. Also, remember, you can follow us at 3C Media Sports on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go to check out the YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of standalone content up there. including B. Scott and I's discussion about the overtime rules. That's up there on the podcast page right now, so go check that out as well. We also have an announcement coming tomorrow about another podcast we're going to be releasing here soon. So that's going to be a lot of fun to dive into. Also, 3C Media on TikTok. There's a lot of TikTok only content over there, so go check that out. Remember, you can watch us live every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. Tuesday nights we record live. Everybody in the chat right now, we've got Dusty, we've got L. Dusty did say that I haven't seen an official report on this, but it's looking like the new Washington team name is going to be the Commanders. So that's pretty interesting. I kind of like that. It's pretty good. We also, like I said, have L in the chat. Speaking of L, another user of Anchor.fm is they just released their author podcast, their writing podcast, So You Wanted Today. So go check that out as well if you are interested in that kind of thing. And then remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard, you can hear the Crash Course podcast. So now looking at college basketball, because we're getting ready to enter the final month of the regular season, final full month of the regular season. We're going to revisit our preseason picks. B. Scott, I forgot, you unfortunately were not on the podcast that we made our preseason picks, so you can kind of go through and kind of critique mine. I know there's at least one on there that you'll like because it's Purdue. But my preseason picks were North Carolina winning the ACC, Kansas winning the Big 12, Purdue winning the Big 10, UCLA winning the Pac-12, and Kentucky winning the SEC.
Not bad.
The current conference leaders, as of Sunday when I made the outline for the podcast, it was Miami leading the ACC, Duke and Notre Dame both a half game back. That's changed because
Notre Dame a half game back, but Duke did just thump them.
Yeah, I was going to say that's different now because Duke and Notre Dame played. But still, I mean, Notre Dame in the top half of the ACC, I mean, we wondered if they could bounce back. That was something
we talked about. Yeah, that was something we talked about, the future of Notre Dame and how are they going to do. And, they're stepping up, especially now I feel like with North Carolina falling off a little bit. Notre Dame is stepping up. And I'll tell you what, the ACC is an interesting conference this year. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's just a very interesting conference.
Yes. Big 12, Kansas is leading right now. Baylor, though, is a half game back. Kansas does have both games still left against Baylor, so that's something to take note of. In the Big 10, Wisconsin and Illinois are both atop the Big 10. Michigan State a half game back. Purdue is 1 game back.
Dogfight. Conference, like always.
UCLA is atop the Pac-12. Arizona
that could change tonight.
Yeah,
they're playing like after we get off air.
Right.
It's Pac-12. They're playing after midnight.
But who are they? Because I don't think they're playing Arizona again, are they?
I think it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. But UCLA.
I feel like I should know these things.
Arizona's a half game back, and then USC is 1 game back. In the ACC, Kentucky is 2 games back of Auburn. Auburn's been the cloud. Which
Auburn's just on a different level. I don't know how I feel about it. SEC basketball to me is just dirty.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Bruce Pearl having the #1 team in the country. It's just I don't know how I feel about that one.
Let's see.
But
Kansas.
I love it like when Mississippi State randomly has a good basketball team. Like,
right.
That's fun.
Texas A&M's solid this year. Now
they're always usually pretty solid.
Kansas is beating up on Iowa State right now, so that's a team. So I mean, Kansas is in this brutal stretch right now. So I don't see UCLA on tonight.
Maybe schedule. I think it is. Maybe it's tomorrow night.
No, let's see. Next game for UCLA is against Arizona, but it's the 3rd, so it's on Thursday.
Okay, I knew it was this week. I knew it was soon.
Yes,
but because that's going to be a fun one, folks. So if you want to stay up past your bedtime,
hey,
there's a little viewing pleasure.
Thursday is my Friday, so I get a chance to so I'll probably throw that one up on the tube.
I don't have days every day is a work day.
Every day, all the days are work days.
All the days.
So the question is, out of those leaders, looking at each conference, which pick are you most confident in? So you can just add which pick you like the most. For me, it's UCLA. North Carolina lost their only meeting to Notre Dame and Miami. They also still have both games versus Duke still on the schedule, so they're like fourth right now. And I don't like North Carolina's chances to do anything with that. Kansas right now is in the throes of a brutal 5-game stretch against ranked teams. Now they are doing decently in that run. They're beating Iowa State right now. They just got throttled by Kentucky, and they did beat Texas Tech last week to start that off. But still, they could come out, like I said, they could come out the other side looking great. But they still have both games remaining versus Baylor. Kentucky is 2 games back, and Auburn won the only meeting, so Kentucky's essentially 3 games back. And then, when I was trying to decide, it's close for me between Purdue and UCLA. Purdue is 4-1 against ranked opponents this season, and they do play all 3 of the teams still in front of them down the stretch. They get Illinois, who they beat earlier this season, one of their wins versus ranked opponents. They do have to go on the road against Wisconsin, the Kohl Center, I believe that is, who they did lose to Wisconsin earlier this season, and then they get Michigan State, who is 2-3 against ranked opponents, and their signature Big Ten win was over Wisconsin. So I mean, I can see Purdue winning those games. So and that'll obviously change how I look at them. But there's also a chance they could lose 1 or 2 of those games and not win the Big Ten regular season like we're projecting here. So and then I have and then there's UCLA, who I do, like I said, have the most confidence in. That's just because they're in a weaker conference. They have both games versus USC, and then of course the game we mentioned on Thursday against Arizona. They did beat Arizona earlier this season, 75-59. So they've already kind of put it on Arizona. Now that was at home. So I mean, they have to go to Arizona to get that try to get that win here in the next year later on in the week. But I think just from the standpoint of them being in a weaker conference, I got to go UCLA as far as the pick I'm the most confident in actually coming true.
Yeah, I have to agree with that pick. I think that's a high confidence pick as well. With only 1 more game against Arizona, and the rest of the Pac-12 just isn't up to the standard of UCLA or Arizona. Now, if Arizona wins on Thursday, it's a totally different ball game. I guess if I had to look at the current conference leaders, the team I'm most confident in maintaining their lead and winning their conference is Auburn. I mean, they've already played Kentucky, and they beat Kentucky in the lone meeting they have with each other. So, they're just playing at a different level right now, and the rest of the SEC just isn't up to par. I mean, is it possible for an upset to happen? Oh yeah, I mean, it's college basketball. Upsets happen all the time, but I feel like of the teams that are currently leading their conferences, I feel the most confident in Auburn, just based off of what their schedule looks like moving forward at this time, and just how physically gifted they are. They're just playing physical basketball, which is interesting coming from the SEC. I guess the SEC, I've always thought, like, when you see basketball players from the SEC, they look like grown men. And I've always seen such a huge difference. Like when Purdue has played an SEC school, it's like, why does it feel like Purdue has little kids running around out there, not looking at height or anything, but like physicality wise? And then you see these guys at the SEC, and it's like, oh my goodness. Now, obviously that's changed a little bit at Purdue, but the SEC, like, their players are just built different. Even in football, we've talked about this in football.
Right.
It's just something with the SEC. But yeah, I'm the most confident in Auburn maintaining of the current teams that are leading their conferences.
Just a quick look at their schedule. Their only remaining game against a ranked opponent is at Tennessee late in the year. So I mean, if it's not like they have to go through some sort of like crazy gauntlet like some of these other teams do. And like I said, Kentucky is essentially 3 games back, being 2 having lost the only meeting. So yeah, I feel confident Auburn's going to at least take home the regular season title, in the SEC. So yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, hey, there's a reason why you talked about them being built different. There's a reason why the SEC always has like 15, however many players drafted every year, like a good percentage of. But
yeah.
yeah,
What's interesting with the SEC is that like they get these blue chip recruits, and they get spread out throughout the conference. Like LSU has one, Georgia has one, Auburn has two, Kentucky has five that never seem to pan out in college. Tennessee has one. They just kind of seem spread out. Whereas like in other conferences, like you got the Big 12, and it's like they're all at Kansas, and so on.
Right. Now looking at those same teams atop the conference, which team is the most surprising for me? It's got to be Wisconsin. I mean, according to Sports Illustrated, their article that they released on November 2nd, the Badgers were projected to be the 52nd ranked team in the country and 9th in the Big Ten by season's end. They first became ranked in the 4th week of the season. They fell out even in week 6. They broke the top 15 in mid-January. They were 8th before losing to Michigan State, as we mentioned earlier, and they're currently the number 11 team in the country. They're at the top of the Big Ten in spite of not really any of their stats checking out, which I think is kind of funny. They lead the Big Ten in turnovers per game, meaning they don't turn the ball over very much, so that's good. They're second in free throw percentage. So they do a lot of the good fundamental things well, which is good. But they're middle of the road or worse in most other statistical categories, according to ESPN, and they were 10-10 in Big Ten play last season. So there's it doesn't if you looked at Wisconsin's stats, you'd be like, oh man, this team is probably middle of the road, which is where they were projected to be, and they're actually right now leading the Big Ten, which is crazy. They do have the second leading scorer in the Big Ten in Johnny Davis, 21 points, 8 rebounds, so that's got a lot to do with it as well. But yeah, the Badgers have just kind of, I don't want to really say came out of nowhere, but they're definitely surprising that they're leading the conference right now. I mean, tied for the lead, but still leading the conference this far into the season.
Yeah, they are surprising, especially after the kind of the disgruntledness that ended their season last year or off season, with the locker room recordings being released of players not happy with Greg Gard and that drama. So it was kind of like, ooh, what's going to happen? But I almost feel like those recordings actually brought this team closer together now and is fueling them. For me, though, the team that really is the most surprising that's sitting at top of their conference is Miami. Because when you look at the SEC, yeah, Miami has had good teams, and you expect them to be a solid team come March sometimes. It's surprising to see them sitting atop the conference, especially with the teams that are typically at the top of the ACC. You have your Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, and so on. That's the typical suspects that you see at the top of the ACC. And you got North Carolina, who's a game back, and they started the season off, they were highly ranked and whatnot. And Duke is Duke. I feel like they're coming on now. They're finally realizing, hey, we need to play really hard for the Coach K farewell tour. But yeah, it's definitely Miami for me. They're the most surprising based off of who the usual suspects are in the ACC. Oh, and Florida State. Florida State's usually right up there as well. So for Miami to be leading that pack is probably the most surprising to me. Wisconsin, it is surprising based off of last year's results and kind of the turmoil you thought you were seeing with them. But you got to realize they're still running kind of like they were when Bo Ryan was there.
Yeah.
They were always just that sneaky good team that, oh, Wisconsin's going to have a down year. Nope. No, they're not. They're going to sneak into the NCAA tournament, or they're going to sneak to the top of the standings as well. That's just what we've come to expect from Wisconsin. Whereas Miami leading the ACC, and for as long as they've been leading the ACC, is also what's surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that too. I mean, you mentioned I can't talk, with Wisconsin as well, that they're not a they're a traditional good team in the Big Ten. They're usually typically pretty good. Miami's had their years, but you would think of Miami, more of a football school. We don't think of Miami really being a school that would sit atop of the ACC. And yeah, I mean, I think that goes to it as well. And Miami, in that article by Sports Illustrated, I think they were 56th. So like they were also a team that wasn't really, they were projected towards the bottom of the ACC as well too this season. So they've had a really surprising year, and they had lost a couple. I think they lost both their games to Florida State, but now Florida State's kind of fallen off a little bit. So Miami's kind of
Well, Florida State, you got to rebound. I need you for the RPI. Purdue needs you to look good again. Same things with you, North Carolina. Figure it out.
Now we talk about teams that are typically powers, typically blue blood programs. We got to talk a little bit here as we wrap up the show tonight. We got to talk about the Indiana Hoosiers. This topic was originally going to be on the heels of IU ending their losing streak to Purdue. We didn't have a podcast last week, but it's still relevant today. Are the Indiana Hoosiers back? Now, we made the caveat before the show started, what does back mean? Because obviously, when you think of it in terms of IU historically, it'd be championship contender, and the answer to that is no. But as far as being competitive, that's kind of more or less what back means. Because, right now, they're 16-5. They're 7-4 in the Big Ten. As I mentioned, they snapped their 9-game losing streak against Purdue, and they're only a game and a half out of the top spot in the Big Ten. So they are, with a good end of their season, could be up near the top of the Big Ten, which is, pretty crazy to think about. As far as being competitive, I think that's, where they're starting to get back to. In 2015, 2016, they beat Purdue. They were last. There was their last Big Ten regular season title and their last NCAA tournament appearance. They made the Sweet 16 last year, and I think that's a realistic expectation for a program of Indiana's prestige. We've made the comparison before to Michigan football, where it's a fan base that thinks that it's still the 70s and 80s, and it's not the 70s and 80s anymore. You want to see them get back to being competitive, but they're not at the championship caliber. I mean, heck, Michigan was back in the in
90s.
Michigan
won a national championship back in
and I was just going to say Michigan this year, even though they made the college football playoff, show that they aren't near the caliber of actually winning a championship. That
which is why Jim Harbaugh will accept the Minnesota Vikings position on Wednesday.
Maybe. We'll see.
They're flying him in, and he has given the Michigan football staff the entire week off, and tomorrow's National Signing Day.
Well,
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think the standard would be that though 2016, where IU, made the tournament. They beat Purdue. They were the regular season champs of the Big Ten. I think that's something that is kind of the next step. If you're trying to get back in your IU, that's the next step to come back and be kind of at least somewhat of what you used to be. And so, I mean, you look at it this season, I mean, they haven't had any tournament appearances since that appearance in 2016, and they haven't finished above 500 in the Big Ten in any of the seasons between then and now. So, in 2021, 2022, they beat Purdue, so check. They are 7-4 in the conference. Now, 5 of their last 9 games are against ranked opponents. They do play Illinois at Assembly Hall on Saturday, so that's kind of the first.
At IU?
Yeah.
Okay, because Illinois
That's true, yeah. They also have an Assembly Hall. So now you got me curious because I'm thinking I'm wrong, but I'm 95% positive it's at IU. So
I think their Assembly Hall changed the name.
Yeah, maybe. ESPN does project them as an 8th seed in the tournament. And I mean, honestly, even realistically, let's say IU loses all 5 games against those ranked opponents, but wins the other 4. I mean, that's 20 and 10. So that still should put you in the tournament, especially being IU.
So I mean, well, especially coming from the Big Ten,
right? So that's looking good that may happen as well. They're not ranked, but they are receiving votes. So that's going in the right direction. Obviously, if they beat Illinois, I feel like they'll be ranked. Now, numbers, looking into the numbers this season, they're second in block shots. Only Michigan State has more. Only two teams. They're one of the only two teams with Michigan State being, having triple digit blocks this season. They're third in field goal percentage. They're third in points. They're fourth in steals in the Big Ten. All improvements on last season. Trace Jackson Davis, is tied as the second leading scorer in the conference. Race Thompson and Pitt transfer Xavier Johnson have also stepped up around him as well, which, I mean, when we did the IU preview at the beginning of the season, I got all this flack from IU fans, saying I didn't know what I was talking about, saying IU wasn't going to be this, tournament team, amazing team. That's basically what I said, was if we didn't know who was going to step up. Race Thompson was going to have to, fill a bigger role, which he has. Xavier Thompson stepped up. They gave Jackson Davis the, pieces around him that he needed.
For example, Trace Jackson Davis was essentially out that entire Purdue game.
Right, exactly.
And it forced other guys to step up, and it showed them that, hey, look, we can actually do this. It's not just him.
Right. So, as far as them being back, I'd say no, as far, just because I want to see more of what they can do in this stretch, because if they go 4-5 and, not really back into the tournament, but like if they really don't show out this last month of the season, even if they beat Illinois and one other team, I think I'm in. I think I'm ready to say, like, IU's back to being competitive, which is good. But I'm like almost there, but not quite there. So don't come for my head, IU fans. I'm sorry, I'm not ready to quite get there yet, but I'm right here. I'm right on the edge. I think they're looking in very good shape, and I definitely have a much more of an opinion of them, a good opinion of them, than I did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that assessment. I think they are on the cusp of being competitive again. They are no longer a doormat in the Big Ten. I'm not 100% ready to say, yes, they're back to being competitive and should be considered for the upper half of the Big Ten. When, you pulled the upset on Purdue, but you've lost to Penn State. You beat up on Maryland, but everybody's beating up on Maryland right now. I need to see consistency. I'm still seeing the team that blew a lead against Wisconsin and just let Wisconsin then steamroll them. You beat Ohio State. The verdict's still out for me on Ohio State, to be honest, as well. I feel like they're middle of the upper pack in the Big Ten. And that's where I think IU can be right now. But like we asked the question, I think I said to you off air, it's like the question was, is IU back? And I'm like, there's different levels of back.
Right.
There's, our realistic standpoint of back to being competitive. Are they back to being competitive, or are they the brainwashed candy striper idea of back where they're hanging a banner this year? And are they back to being competitive? They are right there on the cusp. And as of right now, I would say yes, but I do need to see more. Are they back in terms of hanging banners? No, they are not back in terms of hanging banners. But props to Mike Woodson. He's getting this team to play differently and believe in themselves, and they're actually playing defense for a change. So that's good. But yeah, it's the confidence is rising within this team because they know that they can do it without Trace Davis Jackson. And that's the big thing for them moving, or Trace Jackson Davis. That's the big thing for them moving forward. They need to have these role players need to have confidence in their role and not just focus on TJD. So, but for them to see it actually happen with him on the bench in foul trouble against Purdue, I think that was a huge confidence booster. I will say this: Purdue fans will be watching closely to those ranked games that they still have, and honestly rooting for IU outside of the matchup against Purdue, because those upper echelon teams in the Big Ten, for them losing that helps Purdue out right now. But yeah, they're close to being back fully to being competitive. We're not hanging banners. We're being competitive.
Yeah, looking at their ranked matchups, they have Illinois. It is at home. They are at Michigan State on February 12th. They're at home against Wisconsin, which, I mean, you said they were up on Wisconsin. If they can find a way
I believe they were up. I know that by the end of the game, it was not pretty, and IU fans were like, here we go again.
Yeah. It's a stretch.
Oh no, we suck again.
So they have a three, basically from, in this middle week in February, they've got at Michigan State, Wisconsin, and at Ohio State. So that's going to be a brutal stretch. If they can get through that, then they'll be in good shape. So I'd say, if you could go even 1-2, it's just don't lose all three games, you'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, the game that.
And then their last rank.
I feel like the game that can say a lot for them moving forward is Illinois.
Yeah, because that'll set the tone for the last little bit of the year.
Because Illinois plays differently than Wisconsin. Wisconsin, if you don't shoot yourself in the foot, you can beat them. Purdue shot themselves in the foot against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's beatable. The style that Illinois plays, especially with Kofi Coburn, that's a man down there, and it's going to be interesting to watch TJD in that matchup, because he did not fare well against Purdue's bigs. So it'll be interesting, how well does he perform in that game, and if he's in foul trouble again, who steps up, because the hero of the Purdue IU game was Robert Finney, and he's currently injured. So it'll be interesting to see who could step up in that role and put the team on their shoulders.
Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course podcast. Thank you guys all for watching. Remember, you can follow us at 3C Media Sports on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go to our YouTube channel, 3C Media, over there. We've got some content there for you, standalone content, so go over there. Give us a subscription, give us a like, let us know what you think. Over on TikTok, 3C Media as well. We've got some standalone content for there. Also, remember, you can watch us live every week, Tuesdays at 8 o'clock, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. And then remember, you can listen every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course podcast. You can hear me, or you can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
By me, Brandon_Scott87.
Next week is our Super Bowl preview. We'll be giving you a preview of the Rams and Bengals, so we're going to be diving into all that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll be diving into that next week. But until then, have a good one, everybody.